Okay, so first I'm going to go over confidentiality.
Okay.
So just so you know, we're being recorded right now, and if you disclose that you're planning on hurting yourself or someone else, then that's something that I will have to break confidentiality for. But other than that, everything you say here stays in here.
Okay.
Also, if you talk about hurting an elderly person or a child, that's something that I have to mandatorily report also.
Okay.
So how have you been feeling since our last session?
I've been feeling pretty okay. Maybe just a little bit tired since our last session, but for the most part, I'm feeling okay.
Good. Yeah, I know. A lot of last session was just kind of intake stuff, so we didn't get to go too deep on
Right.
any one thing. It was kind of Spanish Inquisition. But I know you brought up a little bit of anxiety and stuff sometimes you get. Did you want to talk any more about that or?
Let's see. I mean, we can talk about it. I guess that's one of the biggest issues for me is the anxiety. A little bit of, I don't know, like I was saying last time, I think it could possibly be ADHD, but I'm not sure. But my anxiety mainly comes from social anxiety, just because I didn't have a lot of freedom in my teenage years, and so I didn't really know what to expect when it came to like coming going to different parties and stuff like that. And so when I became of age, like college years, and I like did attend parties, I would be like the awkward person who like didn't say much, or oh, why are you so quiet, or you don't want to drink, or you don't. And it's like it's not that I don't want to be here. I'm just trying to keep my shit together. So like I can't. I feel like I can't breathe. But it was like now that I've been on this journey that I've recognized that possibly was social anxiety, but then I recognize it as more of I'm just not comfortable in that environment. Like I just don't like to go to parties. When in reality, it was probably something that's a little bit more deeper than that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Hmm.
So you felt kind of judged in your early days of kind of getting out and getting to know people in high school?
Yes, because well, I wouldn't say in high school, because in high school I didn't really have a problem with making friends and getting to know people. It was just that I didn't get to go anywhere outside of school. Like it was rare that I got to go to parties. So majority of the parties and the things that I attended were in college. So I kind of had to learn what to expect and like what to look for. But by then it's kind of like now you have all this anxiety because it's like okay, what do I expect? Because I never really just been in this environment before. So then it's like okay, all of these people. I think for me, it's like the fear of being judged is the biggest thing. Is what gives me the most anxiety because when I guess in like elementary years, I went through um, quite a bit of bullying. From like it wasn't for too long. I would say from like the time I was in like the fourth grade to about fifth grade. So about 2 years. But if you're consistently being bullied for 2 years, that can take a real impact on your self esteem. So I think that's where it stems from. Just the fear of like I'm going to do something dumb and then everybody's all going to make fun of me. I don't know, and it's crazy to have that thought now that I'm older, and I think I actually just came to the realization as I'm like talking. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's crazy. Kids can be pretty horrible in
right.
those, especially those early elementary
Yes,
years.
they can be brutal. It's like they can be worse than their adults sometimes, because
Much worse.
kids are brutally honest. So you add that with bullying, it's like okay, so yeah.
Yeah, like what kind of stuff would you experience with bullying when you were younger?
So when I was younger, I was like a big chubbier. I was looking back on it, I wasn't even really just huge, but kids back then, I was more so like chubby. But basically for like my weight, being my skin tone, being cause like in the black community, I guess there's a thing of like dark skin and light skin, and so like to be dark skin, you get the insults like, oh, you look like a gorilla, or you like a monkey, or African booty scratcher. I've been called those, or those questions like, are you African, or so yeah, it comes. Yeah, the bullying was pretty tough, and then add that on top of being overweight. Oh, you're fat. Yeah. So
Yeah, especially since those early years is kind of when you
right.
develop social skills.
Exactly.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And that's right at that age, that fourth, fifth grade, that's right when you hit puberty. So on top of going through puberty, yeah. It can be a lot. So yeah.
So would you say the anxiety started for you in social situations around elementary age, or you were talking more about in college when?
I think the start of it started in, I would say, in elementary too, because then I also had like it wasn't necessarily my dad, it was more so my mom. I don't think she realized it, but it was like she was kind of a part of the bullying too. But she didn't. It was more so she was trying to help, but she just didn't go the right way about it. Like, oh, you need a kid's meal, you shouldn't eat that, or you need to lose weight consistently. So it's like not only are the kids at school reminding me, but I come home, my mom's like, you need to lose weight, or this is too tight, or this is jiggling when you walk, and it's just like, okay, thanks.
So just constant criticism everywhere.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Maybe that's why I'm really hard on myself. I never really thought about that because I think that sometimes I can be hard on myself, really hard, and I don't even mean to be like, because I try to be this. I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm a people pleaser, but I try to be a good person because of what I've been through. Like I never want anybody else to feel the way I did. So I try to do everything by the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, would you say one of your goals in therapy is to sort of develop more self-love, or what would you say is your main?
I feel like I mean, I guess you could say that in a sense. I think more so it's just working through that anxiety because I feel like I have worked on the self love since then. Um, Things that I used to tell myself like, oh, I'm ugly, and I would just like I would have like friends or guys would try to talk to me, and I'd be like, oh no, he'll never want to talk to me. I'm ugly. Like it was really bad when I was younger. Or like I had a friend. She gave me a compliment. She was like, Destiny, you're so naturally pretty, and like it literally felt like I couldn't even accept the compliment. I was like, I'm so sorry. I know it's a compliment, but I feel like you're only telling me that because I do look bad. You're trying to make me feel bad. You know, like it was. Mm-hmm. It was really bad. So I'm not at that stage anymore. Like you wouldn't catch me saying that. Like, oh, he'll think I'm ugly, or it's like, I mean, if he's not interested, then that's fine. Maybe I'm just not his type. It's not necessarily I'm ugly. I just might not be what he's interested, or in particular. So
right.
It's just kind of getting older and changing that mindset of like it's not always black and white sometimes.
So you kind of learned how to redirect the narrative in your head to get away from. Like the automatic negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say I'm perfect. I could still work on the self-love. That's why I say, I mean, we could work on it, but I wouldn't say it's like one of my main goals because it's kind of something that I've been kind of working through, as a whole in general. But
got it. So how would you state your main goal when you think of therapy, or what you want to get out of these?
My main goal, I would say I guess just kind of really explore myself and just kind of get to the root of certain things. Because like just now, like I had several realizations just talking it out just now, So I guess just kind of learning myself more, getting to know myself better.
Yeah, it's interesting how just hearing things kind of said back can trigger like, oh, I didn't even know I said that.
Right.
That was happening to me too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So how often would you say nowadays do you kind of experience that social anxiety?
Just about every time I go out. It's just I've learned now that I recognize what it is, I've learned to like, okay, just calm down, like it's not. And I think my biggest thing is I've noticed that my anxiety levels are higher when I know that guys are going to be there involved, but it's not just going to be girls. Because like even with my boyfriend, like meeting his friends, like my anxiety, for example, the other day, he was like, oh, we're going over there and I had to use the restroom. So he was like, oh, well, I'll just ask him if you can, go inside and use the restroom. I was like, wait, you want me to go? I was like, you want me to go inside? I was like, immediately, like my heart just started racing, and I think it's because like too with the bullying, a lot of times it was with males, and so I faced a lot of rejection when it comes to males, and so it's like a bigger fear to like be in a social setting with males even more because I don't know. I guess I just but social anxiety in general, it's just about any time I'm going somewhere. And I used to say most of the time I won't have time. I won't have a good time when I go out unless I have a drink. And I think that was one of the main things that kind of made me realize maybe you have social anxiety because most people, because you don't really think about people are staring at you and stuff like that when you're drunk. So it's kind of like, or even a little bit tipsy. You don't even have to just be like flat out, just a couple of drinks makes you a little bit more.
Yeah.
But having to do that to go out now that I'm going through this process is probably not normal.
It's a little normal to kind of self-medicate for anxiety, actually.
Yeah.
I think that's why substance abuse rates are really high right now, because people have been not as social, and so people are getting messed up a lot more to kind of cope with social anxiety that's really rampant right now. So I would say that's pretty normal. So when you say every time you go out, is it like going to the grocery store too, or is it like specific social outings with a bunch of people?
Oh no, it's not like I'm fine at the grocery store. It has to be somewhere like a party or like the club or somewhere where there's big. And it's crazy because I'm even finding like a carnival or something like that. But it has to be somewhere like I said, like a lounge, a club, or those type of settings like parties, kickbacks. That's where it's hard for me to, even now when I'm talking about it, I can feel myself like the anxiety.
Places where you might be judged
right.
from social sense because you're trying to make those social connections.
Yes.
Okay. And so how do you kind of get yourself to relax when you are feeling that?
I usually take deep breaths. A lot of the times I just get real quiet. And I kind of just observe, because to me, I'm comfortable there in my space, in my own. And I get that a lot when people first meet me. You're so quiet. You haven't said anything. Yeah, trying to keep it together over here. So, but yeah. So that's side. I also bite my nails too. So that's probably another way that I started biting my nails, was just that anxiety of like, I need to fidget with something, so my nails are. That's my way of like keeping me calm, I guess, like a relaxer.
And so do you notice any kind of specific thoughts you'll have when you're, say, in a room hanging out with people? Like what kind of thoughts enter your head? Is it self-critical thoughts or just an overwhelming body sensation of like a heart racing, or?
A little bit of both, it just depends. Like I know there was one time where I went to a party and I like to design clothes, so that particular night I made my own outfit. And like people were giving me compliments on it, but it was like the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, what if they just telling me this because they don't want to tell me it's ugly? Now I feel like I look stupid in this outfit. Now I want to go home and change because I feel like I don't look right. So it's like, like that kind of process. But then there's been over times where it's just like sensory overload. Like there's just too much. I just can't. I'm not feeling the vibe right now. So. Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, looking back on it with some of my friends, like I couldn't understand why they would be frustrated with me. But looking back on it, I probably would have been frustrated with me too, because it's like I brought you to a party and you sat in the corner the whole time. But it's not that I wasn't enjoying myself. At the time I just didn't realize that I have really bad social anxiety. So I can explain that better now, but back then it was just like I just don't like these type of settings, but I'll try to go anyways.
So you mentioned like when people compliment you, then that kind of starts off a lot of those negative thoughts. Do you get those at all before a compliment, or does it seem like when people direct positive feedback at you, that kicks them in?
It's direct positive feedback, I would say, and it's not every time someone gives me a compliment. I would say the compliment thing was more so when I was like younger. I would be, because I was a lot more critical of myself. Now when somebody gives me a compliment, I'm more accepting of it. Like I'm more like, oh, thank you, or I'll compliment on themselves back. I like your shoes or your pants too, or something like that. I'm trying to think if I've been that way to myself recently when somebody has given me a compliment. Not unless I already feel some type of way about how I look, and then they give me a compliment, and then it's like, okay, are you trying to be funny because already, you know what I mean? But I don't think I've just had that problem recently that I can think of.
Okay. And I know you mentioned you got more freedom when you went to college. What was kind of restricting your freedom before that? Was it strict parents?
Oh, yes, strict parents. I have both of my parents are pastors, and they're very, you have to go to church every Sunday. You have to be at church every Wednesday. You can't miss church. It was very rare. They would let us miss like Bible studies during the week sometimes, but Sundays, no. If I went to, like, let's say for an example, my friend had her sweet 16 party, and she had like a hotel thing. You know, we did different things. Her mom and stuff was there, of course. And then that next Sunday morning, before everybody was even up, my parents were there to pick me up for church. Every time, like, there was no, oh, you can have this weekend, just, you know, like, there was no separation between the kid and the church. It's like, I chose to be a pastor, so you gotta live this life with me too. There was no, like, I understand that we chose to be pastors, here's a little free time, because I know you're always at church 24/7. It was like, no, you need to be here and you have to be here. Another example is I was actually sick in the hospital once, like, with the stomach virus. I had been throwing up both ends all night, like, it was really bad.
In the hospital.
Yeah, I had started throwing up blood and everything. I had to go to the emergency room. Well, I wouldn't say the hospital, but I had to go to the emergency room. And my dad is just like, oh, y'all are not coming to church, you know? My mom was like,
your dad said that?
yeah, my dad. And my mom was just like, the girl is sick. She just got, why would we, is it that serious, you know? And then, like, after that, he never did anything like that again, because I guess he realized, like, okay, maybe that was too much. But that was just an example of, like, that's how important going to church was to them. So it was like, you had to, so for me, it was church, school, church, school. I was in choir, so sometimes choir practice at my school, and we would go on trips with the school then, but then other than that, there wasn't. We used to be in Girl Scouts, like me and my sister when we were younger. Stopped doing that because they started having it on Wednesdays, and we couldn't miss church that much. Because Wednesdays were Bible studies.
So you'd see all your friends go hang out after school and stuff, and you couldn't do that
right.
because you had this standing appointment at church?
Yes. Or just because I just couldn't, because my parents were strict and they just wouldn't. I wouldn't even say parents, it was more so my dad when I was younger. But looking back on it, he was that way because of what he went through as a child. And so he felt like he had to have this tight grip on us where it was like, you can't move, you can't breathe. I was 12, and there was like there was a block. This is the house. This is, right there is the other corner. You can still see, right? I walked to the corner to meet my friend. I was 12. To meet my friend and give her a book. I got in trouble for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, what did he go through as a kid? I know you mentioned.
His mom wasn't really there for him. They grew up poor, and he was also sexually abused, which I don't mind disclosing that because he'll tell you openly, like, you know, he was abused as a kid. And so I think because of that, it was like, oh, there's predators outside. You can't, like, he would literally look up the maps and, like, show us where the predators were, like, in the area, like the pedophiles. And, you know, because sexual offenders, they have to be registered and they show, like, where they live and stuff like that in the area. He would, like, pull that up and show us. And so I think it was more so of, like, he meant well, but he didn't realize the damage that he was actually doing and trying to protect us.
So hyper protective.
Oh, yeah.
To the point of kind of, not strangulation, but, you know, what's the word for that?
Suffocate.
Yeah, suffocation. Yeah. Okay. And were there other kids at church that you could hang out with?
Yeah. Now, that wasn't a problem, you know, hanging out with, going over different church members' houses, because it's like, oh, they go to the church, no problem. It was the outside, the friends that, oh, you can't go to this party because, like a pool party, I want to go to a pool party. What if you drown? Like, the extreme level of what can happen was, like, in my dad's mind every time. It would be like, my mom was the reason we had the little bit of freedom that we did have. Like, we started, like, she would take us to the mall and she would drop us off at the mall. And then she would go to my grandma's house, like me and my friends sometimes. So, you know, stuff like that. But again, parties and stuff like that, concerts either. I couldn't go to concerts either.
So when was the first time you went to a party?
Well, I did go to a party when I was in high school. I was 17, but I had to sneak to do it. So it wasn't like they gave me permission, and then they ended up finding out about it, and I got in trouble about it. But that was the only party I went to in my whole, like, teenage high school.
Wow.
Yes.
And so, were you anxious at that party, do you remember? Because it was, like, your first one, or?
You know, I actually wasn't. And I don't know if that's because the people that I was around, it was like a school party, so there wasn't anybody there that I just didn't really know or had never seen before. So it was kind of like being at school again, but just, like, in a party setting. So thinking about that, I don't think I did. I think I might have been nervous, but I think that's just when you go anywhere, you know, a little bit. Because I actually danced and stuff, and at that age, there's no like alcohol and stuff like that. Because this particular party was like at an actual hall, it wasn't at somebody's house. So, you know, alcohol and stuff underage is not even gonna be there. So, I would say it was fine. I can't remember everything that happened that night. I know like the party ended up getting shut down because the birthday girl ended up getting into a fight, like an actual fight, and she got knocked out. And it was like, and that was how my parents ended up finding out about it because it was on the news. And so yeah, but
wow. And so you kind of noticed, and the anxiety kind of started to kick in more when you went to college, and it was like a really new setting, and you were having to develop these brand new relationships with strangers.
Right. I can't really recall the first. I wouldn't really say it was a party that I went to in college because my first couple of years I went to a community college, so I was still at home. But I had more freedom because I was more of I was 18, 19, so it was like I was still having issues with my parents trying to tell me like, oh, you gotta come in at 12, or oh, you gotta, and it would just be like, okay, I'm just gonna spend the night at a friend's house then because I'm not coming home at 12. And so then eventually, once you find ways to get around it, they just stop trying to, because they're like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's getting older. There's really, because they get to the point where it's like, you really can't tell them no. Like, you know what I mean? So it did ease up as I got older, but it was still like, even right after I graduated, I still had issues with them still trying to like control like how long I went out or how, so.
Graduated high school or college?
High school. After I graduated high school to go to college, because I was still at home because I went to a community college. So it was like they would still be like, oh, well, you still live here even though you're in college, so still trying to have that control.
Okay, so your first couple of years of college, they were still pretty hyper controlling?
It wasn't as bad as when I was younger because I was a little bit older, but they were still like trying to, like for an example, I didn't get a car right when I graduated. It was probably about a couple of months after I graduated. I want to say like 6 months after I graduated. I got a car, but it was like my dad was like, oh, she doesn't need a car because if she gets a car, then she's going to go wherever she wants to go. And it's like, isn't that the point of a car? My mom was like, I mean, she has to drive, like, what do you want her to do?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And so, yeah, it was like kind of stuff like that. Or like when I did, because I brought my own car with my overpayment for like my school and just saving up. And my dad was just like, oh, you can only use your car for work and school. And it's like, but I brought the car. Like, how can you tell me the car that I brought is only for work and school? But he got that because one of my other friends, her parents, like, told her that, but they also pay her car note and they brought the car so they can kind of, you know what I mean? Like, her rules are a little bit different. Like, that doesn't apply to me, I guess. I mean, I understand I live with y'all, but, like, little stuff like that. Not that I listened to it, but it was like he was still trying to have that control until he just realized, like, it's a moot point because I'm not, like, going to listen.
Yeah. And so, how did you kind of develop boundaries with your dad on, him allowing you to go where you wanted even though you lived in the house? Because I know that can be because it's kind of it's an unwinnable argument where they're like, well, you live in my house, so
right.
You have to follow my rules. How did you kind of get him to relax?
If I'm being completely honest with you, lying. Lying. If I'm being completely honest with you, I would just be like, it wouldn't be 100% lie. Let's say if I went, because I had two friends back, both of their names was Jasmine. So like for an example, I'd be like, oh, I'm going with the Jasmines, we're gonna go run some errands. Yeah. And then I'll just be like, oh, I'm spending the night. But that night we actually went to the club and stuff like that. But he can't tell me I can't spend the night over there. So, so kind of like telling him, but not telling him exactly what I'm going to go do so that I don't get all the extra.
Yeah. Kind of protecting him since he's very protective.
And me and my mental, because I don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
So today, is he still pretty protective, or how is y'all's relationship right now?
Right now, it's a little bit better than when I was younger. There's still certain things that they're just not going to tolerate. For an example, like my boyfriend, and they went on a cruise this summer. They're like, oh, he can't come because we're not married. So, like, we can't sleep in the same room. We can't even, like, they consider that to be disrespectful. So there's still some things that they're just not going to do. But me having a boyfriend in general, if we took a trip, like, on our own and did it, they're like, I mean, we can't do anything. But going on, like, a family trip and, like, bringing him with me and we're not married, they're like, no, like, you're going to have to,
So pretty conservative.
Yeah, pretty conservative.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But
And
yeah,
do you live at home now?
no, I stay on my own now. I did for like a year after I graduated college, but that's just because I was, transitioning and it didn't make sense to get my own
Saving money.
apartment and while I was still trying to figure out what to do. And I was only going to be there for a year, so it was like, so yeah, I saved money there, but I stay on my own now, so. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And so, do you ever get anxiety about anything else other than social stuff? Like, do you ever have ruminating thoughts or just racing thoughts or anything like that?
If there's something that I need to get done, it consistently like I gotta do this, I have to do this, I have to do this until I do it. So it's or if there's something that I know I want to do, like if, for an example, let's say I want to try cooking a new meal, I will think about that meal all day until I actually cook it. It's like I'll be in waiting mode. Like, okay,
Same.
I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna cook it this way, and then when I cook it this way, then I'm gonna flip it. I don't know why I'm like that, but yeah, it gets that way sometimes. But to just have real major anxiety, like where I start to, it's more so in, like you said, social settings. Like I don't know if you saw it, like you can see like my breathing was starting to change a little bit just talking about it. So
Yeah, I can notice that.
yeah, but.
And so, do you feel pretty good going out to social stuff with your boyfriend? Do you feel like he's a good kind of solid base that makes you feel like being social more? Or
He
how-
actually he does make me feel safe when I'm around him. But if I'm being honest with you, we haven't really been in too many social settings together because we did start off as friends and we were younger. So a lot of our conversations like on the phone, we didn't really see each other in person a lot. And so I can't say that we've been to like a lot of settings together socially. So I couldn't give you like a real answer just yet because it's still kind of like us being together is still kind of new. So
Oh, okay.
yes.
And so, who do you normally like hang out with? Who's like your main core group of friends?
I have one friend that we've been friends since middle school. I've just recently cut off a handful of people in the last few years because they just the way that I've grown, I just kind of outgrew them honestly, and it was just kind of like okay, we're not on the same level anymore. I still love you, but this friendship isn't for me. But I would say the people that I have right now in my life, we're kind of like on the same life path. There's nobody. I don't have a friend that I haven't known less than 5 years right now.
Oh, that's cool.
Close friend. Except for the friends that I've made here, but at school and stuff like that. But just the friends that have been around, there's nobody that I haven't known for. Yeah.
Like Drake's song, "No New Friends."
right. Which I like in meeting new people, and I don't mind making new friends, but the core people that I talk to every day. Yeah, it's been a little more than 5 years.
Yeah. And so, when's the last time, do you think in the past month, that you've like gone out to a social setting and felt kind of panicked?
Social setting in the last month. I'm trying to think, have I been anywhere in the last month? I've been so busy with like work and stuff. I haven't really even just been out. But if you ask me, not next weekend, but the weekend after, I may have a different answer for you because I have plans to go out. So we'll see how I do there.
Oh, okay. Are
Yes.
you nervous about it, or you feel?
I feel pretty okay. It's for my birthday. My birthday is coming up March 29th. So
Oh
yeah. But I don't feel nervous. I'm more so excited because my friends are coming and I haven't seen some of them since I've left Houston. So
yeah. What are y'all gonna do?
just stuff around Dallas, trying to save money. Really, just because I wanted to do something. So we're just gonna like Friday. I'm probably just gonna have something at the house. If not, I'm gonna go to like a hookah lounge, something real, chill, nothing too
Sounds
much.
fun.
Yeah, and then Saturday there's this place called Waterproof. It's like a rooftop pool, free entry. I wanted to go there, and then
Where is that?
it's in here in Dallas. I'm just not sure exactly where. I'm still trying to get to in the area. But then I also had plans to go out to dinner. So I'm either gonna go to Yardbirds or Del Frisco's.
Yardbirds.
Yes, I've heard that it was really good. Excuse me. And then after I wanted to go like to the club somewhere, probably just like I don't know, is it Midtown you'll call it or what is it?
Uptown.
Uptown, yes. And just probably just walk and just and then Sunday just do brunch, nothing too.
That sounds like a great weekend.
Yeah, just kind of doing random stuff, pretty much. Yeah.
So for this upcoming week, is there anything that you kind of want to work on for yourself, or maybe that you're just going to focus on for you, like relaxing, maybe getting some rest, or?
Uh, yeah, I think getting rest and kind of just getting myself together for this weekend coming up is probably going to be one of my focuses, but making sure that I'm also balancing myself out so that I'm not like exhausted by the time next weekend comes, you know? Like I'm still getting everything done, but not like crammed in at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Trying to think of how to end this session. Maybe with say 3 good things about yourself.
Okay, sounds good. So I would say I like my creative side. I love my ability to be able to kind of make nothing into something. I feel like I'm very intuitive, so I like that side of me, and funny as well. I like that.
Those are good ones.
Yes.
Okay, great.
All
Well,
right.
thank you, Destiny.
No problem.
And I'm going to have you fill out a feedback